The April 8th, 2020 special board meeting has been called to order. Roll call shows everyone is present. Are there any agenda changes? If not, we'll move to 4, new business. A, memorandum of understanding, Hortonville Police Department, Wisconsin Professional Police Association.
Basically, what we were doing is when the whole meeting that you had where the administration and the DPW ended up doing their whole switch, getting paid for the 80 hours and working the 40 hours. At that point, we had looked at doing the schedule, and we didn't think that it was a good idea to change it. It's a lot of work, one, and two, we didn't need to do it. But then things changed. The school closed. We lost our part-time SRO. We put him on the road. He went back to his school schedule or his summer schedule versus the school schedule, and we just put him into that rotation. Since then, the school has determined that they are not gonna need to have Brian there 80 hours in a pay period, so now they only want him 24 hours in a pay period. They have him, like today, he was out helping with the compliance checks of the students because they have apparently some students that are not completing their homework assignments via computer and things like that. So Brian went out and helped him with that. He's been working on other school safety issue projects that they have and everything. So he's still up at the school for 24 hours. He has been established that that is his office in the school also. And he's been working out of his office. We're doing whatever we can possibly do to keep all of us apart from each other. The officer, when I come in the morning at 7 o'clock, the officer's already out on the road. Julie's working from home. Brian's up at the school. I'm the only one at the police department. So if there's any walk-ins, there's any phone calls, anything like that, any work that needs to be sent to the sheriff's department for the DA, for the courts and stuff like that, I've been taking care of that work. However, now with all the change with the school, Brian coming in back into a rotation, because we got to figure out what we're going to do with him with the other hours. Now that would put him where we would have multiple officers on, and I think that was something that we need to look at. The other thing is we looked at more and more of the departments are starting to be proactive versus being reactive. Sheriff's Department called me on Monday. Conversation that I had with the captain from the Sheriff's Department was he was going around, he was collecting data from all of the agencies and finding out what each police department had for resources. The fear is that in our law enforcement community, we are one-on-one contact with people, okay? Here's a really good example, and this just happened 2 hours ago. Officer Sweeney got dispatched for a welfare check. A welfare check. He went into the apartment. She ended up coding on the way to the hospital. He doesn't know if she's got COVID, okay? So now, he is going to go home for how many days until they find out what she died of? Wondering what's going on with him. If he's been susceptible, to that. We as a department, now we go, what do we do? Because now if he comes into work tomorrow, do I have to tell him to go home? Because we don't know what had happened. Just because of some of the symptoms that she had, these are things that are running through our head. And this is really kind of personal to me because these are my brothers. I'm like mom to them, and I watch out for them. So with all this in consideration, we looked at that schedule. And we found out that, and we talked it over with David, we talked it over with the guys, we came up with this 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 7 off. It gets them out of there, they can clear their head. If one of them would go down, it would be easier because he's got those 7 days off, to try to fill the rest of the schedule with Brian and I. If we got to pull Brian out of the school for those 24 hours and have him start working the road, and I start working the road, we got part-timers, we got them on the schedule for 30 hours in a 2-hour week. One's working 30 hours, the other one's working 30 hours. We can work those guys up to 80 hours. We can grab 50 more hours for each one of those at $17.29 versus paying somebody overtime for $28.28, okay? So I really thought this over, and I thought, you know what, we probably need to do something. Because if we start losing part of our staff, we're gonna run into a problem. And again, I go back to my conversation with Captain Dietzen, is he's pooling all of what's going on. What do we have? What does Kaukauna have? What does Grand Chute have? What does Hortonville have? Because there might come a time where we might become all one department and work together like the fire departments are doing. And Hortonville might be answering a call in Kaukauna. If we're down, Kaukauna might be answering a call in Hortonville. So we really had to think hard about this, and we did. And actually, it ends up being a cost savings when you go from April to May. However, we have to think that we have that police contract with the SRO contracts at the school, that we no longer have that income, if that's what you want to call it. I just think this would be a good schedule for the guys with everything that's going on. Other people are doing it. There's, you know, like, Outagamie went to a 7 on, 7 off. And then one of those 7 days that they're on is actually a day that they're home and they have to be on call and they have to be able to respond in 15 minutes. Clintonville and New London went to a 5 on, 12-hour days, 10 days off. So there's, I mean, other departments are out there and they're doing it. I talked to Appleton. Appleton's doing a 6 on, 18 off. With 6 of those off days, they're paid. And then what happens is those are your first ones that they're gonna call back. So they're on call and they have to be in the area, ready to go back to work if need be. Kaukauna and Grand Chute, they kind of do the 28 FLSA, which is, they work in a 28-day period. In 14 days, they may work over 80 hours, but then they have to work 16 days. It's kind of an odd schedule, but it kind of balances out because at the end of the year, when it all comes together, they work a total of 1,976 hours, where our guys are working every year 2,080 hours. So it's, every department's got different. Some of them, they don't. We work the guys 2,080 hours. They work 80 hours a week, they get paid for 80 hours a week. Outagamie works 74 and they get paid for 80. Every day, every year. So there's different schedules out there. There's different things to look at and to kind of look at. And we're not looking to do this forever, but they're telling us today in our conference, our phone conference that we had, is that this thing is gonna peak about April 23rd or potentially May 23rd. So we don't know how long, and we don't know if we're gonna get off. We really don't know if we're gonna get hit in fall again. And if the kids go back to school, if they go back to school, I mean, it's gonna be more planning again. This is, for us in the law enforcement world, we are just constantly trying to keep up. We're doing things differently. We're taking more of the phone calls over the phone. You know, if we get a burglary complaint, we try to take it by phone. We get a 911 call, we used to always go to the house, knock on the door, go in, make sure everything is okay. We're not even doing that anymore. We're trying to distance ourselves from the people as much as we can. So I'm asking for this schedule of, and you all got a copy of the MOU? Mm-hmm. And I'm asking for a change for the guys. And it would be 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, and 7 off. And they are actually working 60 hours in the 80-hour pay period. Now some of the guys had said to me, because we have a project rolling that we're doing, we're updating all our policies, procedures, and our, training manual. We, signed on with Alexapol, and they'll professionally do those, but however, there's 155 policies that we have to lay our eyes on. So Tyler and Brian have taken it upon themselves, because they're my two that I have assigned to task with me on this. They've taken it upon themselves to create a go-to-me meeting, okay, so that they can share their screens and they can update the policies on their 7 days off. Because they said they're gonna go crazy, because there's just sitting home, nobody wants to do anything. Hauser said to me the other day, we were talking about gas prices, and he says, yeah, I wish I could store up 5 years of gas, because right now one tank lasts me 3 weeks. I mean, these guys go home and they just stay home. So this is what I'm asking, if anybody's got any questions?
Is this MOU, is that in effect already or not?
No. We're looking to start it on Sunday. We wanna start it on a pay
Okay,
period.
I read the bottom of it, you said it was in effect already?
Yeah, well, it would be starting on Sunday
With the pay cycle.
with the pay cycle. Our pay period ends this Saturday, starts on Sunday. So we're looking to get something rolling as soon as possible.
My question about this is, in the union book, and this is an amendment to the union,
Yes. It's a sidebar.
Article 28, amendments. This agreement may be amended by mutual consent of the parties. Such consent and amendment shall be in writing. We were not notified. We were told nothing. You were going to go ahead with this. It was going to be signed, sealed, and delivered.
I don't have an Article 28.
The signature page.
The signature page.
Oh, way on the back here.
And I guess my question is, the village president signed the union, the administrator,
Mhm.
the WPP agent, and Brian Barr. Why are you signing for your employees on a union amendment? And why am I not on that union amendment?
And I'm not sure, because it's a sidebar is what it is. And the actual Tom, he's the one that created this. I don't have anything to do with it. Brian's the one that has to do with it.
Well, usually you never have,
I mean, if that's a problem, we can get this.
usually you never have a boss, which is what you are,
Mhm.
signing something that involves pay or hours. So I guess this is really a concern to me, if this is legal. It also was presented to us after the fact. None of us village board members were notified. And that's why I asked David to call this meeting, because this is not a good thing to ignore every board member in this village when it pertains to something that is the budget. This concerns our budget.
But this actually, it was a plus to our budget. We're saving $1,900 a month.
Jeannie, did anybody reach out to you, the administrator? David, did you reach out to any board members, including the
email
president?
was, once we got to once it was signed and put together, that's when I emailed it to you all.
The only reason we're here tonight is because I asked, because this was going under the table. None of us board members were aware of any of this.
Do you think it was, excuse me, do you think it was intentional, or just because we had to make a decision?
Well, I'm
I mean,
not
I
laying,
hate to-
I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm calling anybody, but
Right,
I don't see how anything like this can be legal when the village board has to approve something like this before we can sign this,
okay.
before anyone can sign this. You know-
And I guess, I hear you, Jeannie, but I would also say these are such incredibly unique circumstances with the staff. David came and brought to the board, that proposal, and we voted on it.
I agree, Jeannie, but I guess my question is, can this be amended? If we approve this, it can be
Absolutely.
amended with the new
It's-
signature, it would include the village president. I agree, you signed the union contract.
Mhm.
I don't think there was malintent here. I mean, David, did you have malintent? Chris, did you have malintent? No, I don't think there was malintent. I mean, I look at this and go, okay, well, I guess, you know, it can be amended to follow the chain of the procedure that should have been done. I get that, but I'm not gonna blame anybody
And
for doing that.
I did a spreadsheet of the hours we would be paying these officers at 20 hours a pay period, and it comes to $5,315.80 approximately, so I'm not sure I had everyone's wages correct. I took them out of the union book, but I'm not positive. So if we would be off, let's just say, because this goes out to December 31st, we are asking our taxpayers to pay essential employees $42,526.
It doesn't go till December 31st. We had to put a sunset on there in case, if this
In
would.
case, it could.
Yeah, right.
It could.
This could go on for another 2 years. But this could also go away in June. Just to kind of keep that in mind.
Also, the city of Appleton, when I checked, have 123 officers. This is why they are going to cells. They are trying to keep as many as these officers apart because they have so many on duty at one time. Because look at the size of them versus the size of Hortonville. And so we have one officer on at a time, one officer in a vehicle, mostly. So they're not in contact with the other officers. The
However,
county said they were doing 1 day at home, but that person is on call. They also said 1 day of overtime is possible. That's it, no more. I understood New London was not doing this. I have contacted other towns and municipalities. They are not doing this. I contacted someone in Brown County. They said Brown County is not doing this with any of their officers in Brown County. I contacted someone that works in Fond du Lac. They are not doing this, especially when we have a small department like this and we need every officer on duty. And in their union book, it states you will work 80 hours. That's why I don't know what the county has or Grand Chute or anyone else, what they have in their unions, but in our union book, it says 80 hours
And
of work.
And I understand that, and that's what this is it's a sidebar. It's
And this
basically,
is
it's-
why Macy said we will follow this. When we had our other meeting, it said police are not included in this. They're essential. We follow this union contract.
I get you, Jeannie, but we did ask Chris at the time, and she said that she was looking at modifying schedules. So I don't think this was an overnight deal. Was this was something,
This is something that we had to keep in the back of our mind because it's changing daily, it's changing weekly, you know, and we gotta figure out what we're gonna do, because if all of a sudden we start losing officers,
If we lose officers, we have mutual aid.
not necessarily,
The
we
state
can't
says
count
you
on that.
have to be covered by mutual aid with county.
But I understand that, but we can't count on that right now. This is an emergency situation.
Everyone else is working.
When's he gonna get notified if he was exposed? Do you know?
Their autopsy has to be done and they have to find the reason for death.
but he's on duty, right?
I compare it to our staff in the office, and I don't wanna minimize what they're doing, but they're working 40, getting paid for 80.
They're not union.
I realize that, but again, I think it's such a unique situation, and all the precautions, the police officers are going to homes, having that contact directly with the people, whereas here in the village, our employees were able to take precautions ahead of time for voting, for everything, and we're still staggering them in order to protect the staff, so that if one staff member gets sick, another staff member is able to cover. I think we owe the same to our officers who are going right in there in the homes. And I know they're union, but again, I think this is such a unique situation, we have to look at it that way.
What do you say then to all the people that work in a grocery store and see thousands of people a day? And they have to be to work or be fired?
It's a mess. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that, but I think we can be proactive here. Maybe maybe we'll be lucky and nobody will go down. I feel for everybody on the forefront, but what can we do as the employer to do our part to respect our employees' health and their safety while still protecting the community? And I think we did that with the staff here in the office, and I would
Office,
hope,
Public Works.
and I would hope we could do the same for our officers.
Okay,
Go
can
ahead.
I have the floor for a second?
Of course.
Thank you, I've been patient. I have a little bit to say about this. One is, I'm concerned that we didn't follow the process.
And I'm
Okay?
sorry, I
There is
guess
a
I
process laid out.
didn't see
You- You can call whatever that document is, you can call it whatever you want, but it is an amendment to specific portions of the union contract. And there is a process for doing that. It involves the entire board. It involves the two parties being the Hortonville Village Board and the Hortonville Police Department Association, I believe is the name of the other party, right? In order to make substantial changes to this contract, right? Otherwise, this contract has to be fulfilled, okay? I think that the document that went out is outside of that process and is in violation of the terms of the contract. I think that a contract protects both parties. I think that's the purpose of the contract, right? When it's negotiated, there are plenty of things in here that say this is what the contract does for the PD, and this is what the contract does for the village, right? There's a reason for that, because unforeseen circumstances do come up, and they have to be addressed using the letter of the contract that was agreed to by both parties, okay? That can be changed, but you have to start with that. You cannot circumvent that contract, okay? And we asked about that when we had the meeting the other day, right? Okay, so, with that being said, a change to having the officers work 60 hours a week and get paid for 40 is a fundamental change to the contract. Okay, the contract specifically says it is 80 hours a week for full-time. It says anything other than 80 hours is not a full-time employee. So technically, for the way that I read the contract, if you want to move everybody to 60 hours, they're all part-time. Now, I don't think that is even close to a reasonable reading of this, and I don't think that's the way that anybody intends it to be. But I want you to understand that this contract is very, very specific. I went through it over and over again. Okay, I can see the situation from both sides. I understand exactly what Pat said, and that I understand the risk that's involved. But I also, I see that we granted privileges to, or special compensation or dispensation to the Public Works and to the library and to the office staff. But every single one of them was treated differently. The library staff is completely autonomous, so they handled their own. They decided who was going to work from home, how much they were going to do, what they were going to do, who was going to get paid, who wasn't going to get paid. The board has no say in that. The office, it was determined who was critical and who had to be there and who overlapped and who couldn't be there. So it was handled independently from the other two departments, right? And as well as people that could work from home are sent home to work from home. Not just blanket carte blanche, it's 40 hours, you're getting paid for 80. Okay, so that was dealt with in an individual manner for each individual case. Public Works does not have the equipment, facilities, or tasks to do in order to be able to split up the crews that they have while maintaining the distance required for the safety of the employees, right? And for the continuation of the service. So if somebody gets sick, they don't have we could have, as a board, said, okay, fine, we will pay you for 80 hours, but the other crew has to come in and one guy can sit in that room all day and one guy can sit in that room all day and one guy can sit back there all day. We didn't do that because that's a crazy thing to do, right? So we said half of your team goes home, the other half comes here. It was brought to the board, right, as the process should be.
And I've said I'm sorry how many
Yes,
times already.
I understand.
I mean,
I-
you can keep saying it
No,
over and over.
I understand that.
And I get it. And you know what, to be honest with you, this was drafted by the sergeant, and I truly thought that because he knows what he's doing, and he's been the union president for how long, that things would have been all right. And I brought it to David, I showed David signed it. I mean.
Yep. This is
I-
not,
I totally.
this is not a criticism. I'm just going through the process. And the process was not followed from my perspective. Now, I have one other, so the other side of this is that, I am very much if you agree that this is what you're going to do, this is what you should be doing. Now, I think this conversation would have been very, very different if this happened in a different order. If this happened similar to what happened with Public Works, or it happened similar to what happened in the office, right, where we came to them, or they made some suggestion that, hey, maybe we need to look at this, right? But that's not how this came to us. This came to us through these emails, which says, we're looking at possible grievances. The officers want this. They see, I'm paraphrasing, but they see everybody else getting time off. They want to get paid and not have to work. Now, that was absolutely the wrong way for this conversation to begin, because that puts the village board boxed into a corner. Let me finish, please. Okay? Now, you brought up a couple of things. One was that the police do one-on-one, and I completely agree with that, I understand that. But everything that has been proposed here, from what I can see, doesn't mitigate that risk. It does, I can see you, and modifying your procedures absolutely mitigates a lot of the risk for the officers. You're not going in when you don't have to, you're making callbacks. Those are great things, and that's exactly that can be done within the guidelines of what your authority is. I don't see how any of the changes that are being proposed would change anything with what happened with the example that you gave with Sweeney. I don't see how it would change anything with any other potential risk.
But it would, because it would take Sweeney out of the schedule for one whole week.
Okay?
So right now, you have Jason and Sean are switching, okay? And this goes on all day long. One comes in the morning, one goes out. One comes in the morning, one goes out. One comes in the morning, one goes out. And this goes night and day, night and day. So if you eliminate that for a week, that they don't have to do a shift change, that's huge.
Okay, so, but we're saying we're
So
gonna
now-
reduce the number of hours for all of the officers, all the full-time officers, from 80 to 60,
So
right? And then after that, then you said, well, we might have to do work for other people. So you're going to have to work 60 hours, and less than 60 of it is going to go to, and we're going to be paying for it, and the officers are gonna go somewhere else. We're gonna be paying them for 80.
It was,
Jeez.
it was something that the captain was talking about. He's looking at the totality of what this could turn into.
Yes.
Because I have a Police One page, and it's a magazine, and it talks about all the officers and the first responders and the firefighters that are dropping left and right because they're being put on quarantine. So now if Sweeney gets quarantined and he has contact with Stevens, they both could be quarantined.
So you're saying there's no way for you to,
Is there a way you can separate them?
that's what I was just gonna say, there's no way for you to adjust somebody's schedule or
And that's-
workload so that
and
way they don't
that's-
come into contact with anybody
And
until you know.
that's what we're looking at doing.
By reducing everybody's hours by 20 hours a week.
It's giving them more days off, I think.
It's
that-
giving them more days off.
Yes, but this isn't, so you're actually doing the exact opposite. So you're saying, okay, Sweeney might be infected now, okay? So let's cut everybody else's hours by 20 hours a week, and then try to fill in Sweeney's hours with those other officers. So you've already cut their hours by 20 hours a week, and then now you're gonna try to fill in for somebody that gets sick. So what do you do if somebody does get sick? Now you've written into a contract that says, okay, if you work 60, you're gonna get paid 80. If you work 64, you're gonna get paid 84. right? So you're gonna adjust everybody's hours down, and then at a time when you potentially might need them, to have those hours already to be able to cover if somebody else gets sick. Do you see where that doesn't add up?
And I get that, but then, on the other hand, I look at the officers and what they see that happened with the rest of the village. You
The
know
rest of
what?
the village is not a contracted, not a union contract.
And I get that. But why would we, as a police department, be treated any different than somebody else?
Because they negotiated this. Somebody from the public works can be let go tomorrow, right?
Well, somebody from the police department can be like.
This very specific about
they
what the
do.
protections for the police
But-
officers are,
Right,
right? Wisconsin, last time I checked, Wisconsin's still an at-will employment state.
right.
So anybody who works for public works, anybody who works in that office can be let go tomorrow. If you're in a union, the village could attempt to let you go, but if it does not fall under the policies and procedures that are defined in the union contract, you cannot be. You are provided protection from this, by this document, if you're in the union.
Not
The
necessarily.
village is also provided protection from this document.
Not necessarily.
Well,
That's
There-
what
I
a
mean,
union's
That's
for.
what it is.
You ultimately could have an employee that is showing up late for work once a month or twice a month or whatever, and you could actually, if you have something there, you could actually get rid of them, you know, and fire them for poor work performance. I mean, there's ways.
now,
You know-
I'm not opposed, I want to stop you. I'm not opposed to working out some compensation for the police officers. I am very opposed to circumventing the process that's laid out and being dictated via call in sick or a grievance or something like that,
They
being
have-
dictated to from the board to the board.
They have never indicated that they were gonna call in sick. I don't know where that came
This is,
from.
well, no, that, they didn't indicate that, but in the last email,
Because-
some of the last email that we received, the last email I
word
received
grievance
said
was used in
they're
that as-
seeing 75% call-ins for the departments that are not doing this.
The grievance was.
For
I
what?
think, well,
That came from Mr.
portion.
Macy.
Yes.
Talked
What-
to Jim Macy.
What about, I
He
haven't.
said that some of the departments
Some
that
of
are
the
not
departments that are
doing
not
this.
doing proactive are realizing better than 75% call-in rates by their employees.
Well, I beg to differ with our police department. These guys very seldom use their sick time. Very seldom. I had one that went to school, he was working at school and he came back here because school sent him basically home, okay? Sent him back to the police department. He had such a runny nose and he was coughing that I said to him, I said, you know what, you need to go home. And this was months ago, months and months ago. But these guys, they refuse to I don't think Jason Sweeney has ever called in sick. These guys are not just gonna start calling in sick. He had made that comment today, and I said, that's not gonna happen. Where are you getting this from? That's a different department, that's not our department. And as far as a grievance, I think the grievance is the wrong word. I think they're just upset, and I don't even know if they're upset. I can't even say that they're upset, you know, because they would probably say, you know what, if this doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We're gonna continue doing our jobs because they're dedicated and they love this community. They do. And it is what it is, I guess. And unfortunately, I thought that this would help them at least get out of here and mentally and physically be away and to be able to be with their family and not think about this. I mean, Jason Sweeney now he gets to go home and he takes off his clothes in the garage. He washes his clothes every night. You know, he doesn't wash his clothes with somebody else's because you have no idea. You're going in these houses and you don't know what you're coming into contact with. It's dangerous right now for law enforcement. And I would hope that you guys would take that into consideration.
My daughter works in a doctor's office. She
Mine does
comes
too.
home, she peels off her clothes, they go in the washer,
And they take a shower, yeah.
and she tells her children not to touch her,
Mhm.
and she has to work.
Yeah.
She's not given the option.
I have a daughter that's an RN, same thing.
She is in the medical field,
Yeah.
on the front lines. She's not given that option.
Right,
So they-
And
yeah.
she's an essential worker, just like the PD
I
is.
get that and I understand that.
So we're
but-
all in the same boat here.
But we're all in the same village. And that's why I was asking. So-
She's even at more risk because she's got patients that come in, you don't know if they've got it or not. In fact, they think one did. So, I mean, these are the chances, just like he went to this call today, those are your chances.
Yep, and we get that.
So, I
And
mean,
we're
this
police,
is
we-
your
we
job.
run. And we get that, we're police and we run to danger.
If you're dedicated, then you
Mhm.
stay here and you work your job.
Yep. And they will.
All the hours.
And they will. I mean, they will not call in sick. They will
But they'll
not
take
use,
off 20 hours in a 2-week period.
they will not use family medical leave. Gee, it's no different than the DPW working 40 hours and getting
It
paid for
is
80
not.
hours.
There
It-
again, we
yes.
clarified, this does not have, you're talking apples and oranges. You're talking union, non-union. If they want the same benefits, then get out of the union.
I guess, again, it sounds like the process is the issue here. And that a step was skipped. Again, I just don't think, I just think we have to look at it differently. I totally understand what you're saying,
And
but,
I think there is a
can
difference.
I just finish?
Yeah.
I just think, if I was a police officer, and I knew that other employees within the village their health was being recognized. So, and I remember specifically it stating that somebody works a week, then they have 10 days off, the weekend plus the following week, in case. So, we have a memorandum of understanding asking for 7 days of space between. Again, I get it, the process via the union wasn't followed. I think, David probably missed that too, I'm assuming, because you signed it also, am I right? I mean,
With the understanding we go to you. 'cause
yeah,
it was
so
not checked with the
I
board.
don't think we can, I hate to belabor it and figure out, I hope we can figure out something that'll work.
That was-
So
Go to
the way,
page
the way,
3.
the way this memorandum works is they work 3 on, 2 off, 3 on, 7 off. So the officers would work 6 days out of 14 days. So, I think that there's a fundamental difference between the public works and the police. The public works has tasks that they have to do. They have to rip up a street, they have to do, they have emergencies as well, but they have tasks that they have to do. I think that the police department, you can't put off the 20 hours of time that officer was going to be out and about and be visible in the village until after this is over, like the public works can. I think it's a very different circumstance. I think I'm not opposed to a recognition of the police officers in even in a monetary sense. But
It
I'm
sounds
opposed
like-
to
It
I'm
sounds
opposed
like
to
that might
taking
be
the time
coming
off.
From the feds too, they're talking about.
Yeah.
that. So-
Yes.
So, Peter,
Yep.
hey, do you have anything to say?
Not at this point. I caught most of it. It's kind of hard to hear. David, you have your phone right in front of you?
I do.
Yeah. It's hard to pick up like what Jeannie is saying and
Turn it around.
Jim Moeller and the other people too. So, I can add comment. The only comment I think I could add would be the fact that, can everybody hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. The only comment I think I could add would be that, there's a contractual agreement between the police department, or their, representatives and the union representatives and the village. They're separate from what, the public, works department is because they're not union. The other thing is we have no control
make something clear. I don't think this has anything to do with the officers demanding this. I want you all to know that. It's not the officers that are demanding this. This is something that I saw that was happening within the village, and I was looking at how can we compensate them, okay? We had talked about, so say for instance, you give them 40 hours, okay? If we give them 40 hours, that means I gotta pay them for being off for 40 hours, and now I gotta pay somebody else to cover their shift.
Yeah,
Now that's gonna be additional money for the village. So if we do any type of compensation, we talked about, you know, I said, Brian and I, we really talked this over. And I mean, how could you compensate? And we really couldn't come up with a good compensation that was gonna cost the village a lot of money, other than doing something like this.
yeah, you know, we're in a critical safety situation here where, you know, and again, we're under contractual agreement between, their union and the village. You know, they need to work those 80 hours, they really do. And I think you probably would agree with that. The issue here is that they look around and they see everybody else getting additional hazard pay or compensation or getting paid for 80 when they work 60. You know, maybe we compensate them in a different way. It's going to affect your budget, but maybe if they work 80 hours in a pay period, they get compensated 4 hours of vacation pay for every 40-day work. So, I mean, you're giving them 10%, but that's going to affect your budget. So it's not that you lose the officer's time because they'll still work the 80, which we do need. But for every 40-hour block, they get a 4-hour vacation stipend, if you will, so that they can take between now and the end of the year. It's just a thought. It's not like we're paying them hazard pay by giving them extra money for working a 40-hour period. It's not like 10%, so it's not like another $2.10 or whatever it might work out to be. It's just a thought.
So,
And maybe that's something that could be, and I know it takes more time to go through committee. For some, you know, you had internal discussion with Chris, but the board members weren't asked for any input in this either. And that's one thing I question.
so something I
You
could,
know, anything, Dan, was that you?
no, that.
Yes, it
that's-
was.
yeah.
Okay.
You were part of all
Anything that
those
we do
discussions.
above and beyond the contract,
I-
and again, I don't want to get into contractual disagreements, but anything I think that we do that would incent them in some way, shape, or form, without offending the contractual agreement, could be done as an addendum, as an MOU with a specific start time, and a specific ending time. So in other words, maybe April 1 of this year until maybe June 1 or July 1, and then it could be extended. We don't know where this is going to end. And again, what Chris said, I think I take into consideration is it could go on for months. It could go on for, you know,
And it might be something that has to wait a while also.
what?
Because we don't know how long this COVID is going to last, this crisis.
No,
You know,
no.
so
If you wanted to
it's really hard to
you
say
probably
what,
didn't have access to because I was sitting here. Seems to be plateauing. Well, that doesn't mean anything. You know, there's no cure for this, no inoculation or anything, so we could resurge, this could resurge in the fall. We could deal with this until, you know, maybe spring of next year when they finally have some kind of remedy for it. But anyway, I guess that's my input to it. I don't want to upset the officers.
There is.
Oh, there is?
Mhm.
What does that say?
It's gonna be Article 2,
Letter N,
yep, letter N.
the village has the, right to take whatever action is necessary to carry out the functions of the village in situations of emergencies. We control that.
Yeah, it's a manager's right to take whatever action is necessary to carry out the functions of the village in a situation of an emergency.
But it doesn't say national emergency, it just says emergency. That could be a tornado.
And you're right,
Yeah.
it could be.
Yeah. So maybe that language has to change, and that would be part of negotiations under a new contract. Maybe specific wording, could be inserted. This is a national emergency. Actually, it's a worldwide emergency. And maybe something like that should be added.
So could we, I think, I couldn't see a lot of opposition to this, but could we, or could you, Chris, work a schedule that isn't limited to a 2-week schedule? And that with some flexibility, and then still allow officers to have time off and then still be able to fulfill their obligation? So say you stretched it out to a month-long schedule. Could you work in and still have the 80 out, still accumulate to, instead of 80, accumulate to 160 hours in a month? And then find a way to schedule where you're giving the breaks to the officers, and then maybe if we can find something that we can use to additionally compensate the officers, like extra vacation, something of that nature, would that?
The problem is the vacation's it's gonna be a budget killer.
Well,
I
Yeah,
mean,
but Chris, either way, it's gonna be budgetary.
yeah,
but this way is
Either way.
not though.
So, Chris, you're gonna have to just figure this out. This is not a usual case.
Right.
This is unusual case. You just have to figure it out. It's gonna be a budgetary issue no matter whatever way you look at it.
So what are you suggesting, Peter, or I guess I'm trying to get off of Jim, so Jim, are you suggesting that we do, so 100 and,
well, the suggestion I just threw out there was to potentially allow flexibility, and still meet the obligations of the patrol officers that we have. So if you can't come up with a schedule that works to be able to give officers enough time off in one block in a 2-week period, maybe you expand that out to a 4-week period, and then you bridge across the 2-week periods where you have time off at the end of, I'm not a scheduler, but you can bridge so you have time off at the end of your 2-week period and the beginning of your next 2-week period, but you still maintain your 80 hours. By doing that, instead of having a strict rotation, maybe it's a floating rotation where you end up with that same block of time off, right? Where you still get your mental break, where you have a week off somewhere, or 8 days. So if it works out, you get 4 days off at the end of the 2 weeks and 4 days off at the beginning of the next 2 weeks. And then you have your on off. I know I talked to my neighbor. He's a police officer in New London. I talked to him yesterday, and they came to them with different proposals, and they shot him down. They said no. They came to them with that 7 days on, 7 days off,
Right.
and then time off unpaid. He said they're working 66 hours, getting paid for 66. That's what they get. They're not getting paid for extra.
Yeah, they're doing 5 on, 10 off. I
Yeah.
just talked to the chief today.
Well, I just talked to Mike yesterday
Sure.
at about 5 o'clock.
But you
So,
know, in the
and-
union book, doesn't it already say you have 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off, 2 on, 2 off, with 3 days off falling on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? So you already do have your officers spaced out normally.
I'm not understanding, what do you mean spaced out?
Well, they're not,
We're looking to do it like a 7-day stretch, that they can physically leave and get away from here. If something would happen, I'm gonna use Jason again, okay, so if something would happen to Jason and he would be quarantined for 15 days, okay? He's got those 7 days that he's off, if it lands somewhere in there, hopefully it would, okay? But then for the other 8 days, he actually can take workman's comp,
so you're looking to minimize having the time to cover.
yes.
That's part of the plan.
That's-
I mean,
that's-
that's how I
That's the
read
whole
this.
goal for the
That's
year, is to minimize
is
your
to-
need to cover.
Exactly.
Because hopefully, if you're lucky, he would find out that he had to be quarantined on day one of his 7
Right.
days, so you only have to cover 8 days.
Yes. That's what I'm looking, because.
Less than that,
he-
actually.
Because then
5
that
days.
other 8
I looked at
days,
it that way
he
too. I
can
just
file
looked-
for
I
workman's
haven't
comp
been
and
able
get
to
paid
see
for
it.
the,
But there's no,
8 days.
I mean, there's no, that assumes that, you know, that, I mean, because there's an incubation period of this, there's no,
No.
there's
there-
no tied,
there
there's
isn't.
nothing tied to saying that you're gonna get that 7 days
Agreed.
as that.
Agreed. I'm
Because
just
if you
saying-
get exposed on the
Right.
job,
But
you're gonna
there's-
get sick like 2 days before you're
But
supposed to
there's
come
no,
back.
Easier for
but
her
there's
to
no
cover.
saying that we're gonna have a bunch of officers that are going down either. We might all come out healthy out of this whole thing.
I think all she's trying to do is, if something were to happen, the hope
I'm
is
trying to
that
be
it
proactive.
falls under one of the 7 days off periods, because then it reduces the amount, you know, because once a person gets it, what I've read is that 15 days you have to, before you can go do anything, right? So the hope is that you're minimizing the number of days, working days in that 2-week stretch
Yep.
that the person will be working, and I get that. I'm concerned about paying when we have a union contract, because a union contract is a union contract, and Pat had said, you know, well, they're seeing, you know, whatever, that other people are getting this and other people are getting that. Yes, but they're getting things that other people aren't getting because they negotiated it. So you can't just look at what they're not getting, you have to also look at what they are getting, because that's a two-part of the problem. So I don't think this is easy.
Can I just ask, I know we've been coming down on you, Chris, for this, but this was, you were also, with the caveat that this would be coming back to the board, I get that. But going back and forth with this, who was the primary emailer in this? Who was, I mean, I feel like we're charging at you, when actually there was no malintent. I'm thinking you were probably just as much a part of this process as Chris. There was no malintent here. Nobody meant to do anything wrong. I just don't want to come out of this meeting going, oh my God, we just bitched at Chris the entire time. That's
But-
not fair.
And I agree with you, but what I'm very worried about, I read this contract and this, you know, part of it says, you know, after the last signature, that date, it's enacted, and
Yeah,
I'm
and they both signed
very,
it, so.
and I'm really, you know, it takes everybody else out of the loop here.
Yeah, I agree. We should have been initially, this should have gone through the village board first. I absolutely 100% agree with you on that. But there were 2 people from our village that did sign it on behalf of the village, not as part of the association. Brian signed it on behalf of the association. So I don't want to come out of this meeting going, we just sat and bitched at somebody. That's not the point. The point is, we'll fix the process. We won't do that again. Obviously, you learn from your mistakes, but I want to let that go and then move forward. And what can we do to make this something where these officers are safer? We've already agreed there's no way they can be safe, but we need to make them safer.
But I'm concerned about the fact that if the goal here is to adjust the schedule so that they have 7 days off consecutively, so that if something were to happen, I don't know that that's necessarily needed. I don't think we could do it down to 60 hours to make that happen. I think that there could be an adjustment to the scheduling process. Justin
Agreed.
works
Yeah.
on a COS schedule that's based on
And that's
a
why-
monthly plan,
Yeah.
and he does 3 days on, blah, 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 and he'll get his 7-day stretch. I mean, same
Yeah.
as your husband. So I don't know that he still works the hours. I just don't know that 60 hours, paying him for 80, can't be, I don't think that's solving the problem. We're just reducing the number of hours worked. I think that it's a scheduling process that needs to happen, less of a reduction of hours.
I honestly think that the police visibility, in this time is actually more important. I mean, just get in the car and drive around is even more important than it is when we didn't have this going on, right? Because if you walk down the streets at night, it's a ghost town, right? I mean, it's already pretty quiet in Hortonville anyway, but it's a ghost town now. I mean, there is nothing going on. If somebody wants to go break a window, there's nobody around to
Jim
hear
doesn't
it.
live on Main and Nash like I
And
do.
they're wearing a
Right?
mask, so you can't
There
even
is
identify.
nothing, right? I mean, there is nothing to make
Jim
people
doesn't live where I
feel,
live.
I mean, people feel, they don't feel at ease when they walk around, because I feel it. When I walk around town
Yeah.
and I see somebody that I don't know walk, and unfortunately, you know, I live next to the apartment complex, there's a lot of people I don't know. You know, I live in cottages in Maine, and I see people and I start looking, I'm like, who are you? Why are you walking through our town? Yeah, I'm not at my house, there's nobody at my house, me and my wife and kids are walking, you know, what, if I come home, is my garage door gonna be pried up and nobody's there, nobody's out? I mean, everybody's out at like 5 o'clock, walking around and walking their dogs and stuff,
The other night
but
we
after
had
that,
somebody,
it's
a
quiet.
company power washing the bank across the street at 11:30 at night on a Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean,
How
I
bizarre
think
is
the
that?
visibility for the police department right now is actually more important. Whether they're, you know, even if they're mitigating their risk as much as they can, just to be visible is very important right now.
And that varies from department to department. There's departments out there that won't let their officers out of their police departments.
Yeah, I think that's a
I
mistake.
think that's crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm like, go find someplace to sit, you know, I tell the guys to be out there.
Yeah.
And we will. I mean, and we'll continue to be out
I
there.
mean, that
We'll
isolates them,
continue-
that's a smart way to
We'll
do it.
continue to do what we're doing. And there's gonna be 2 of us on at a time because we have that extra guy. So, you know, because of Brian coming out of the school. So,
And you think you still can stay separated, right?
no. They're still, so if we have like that welfare call and how that went down,
But I mean, separated till there's a,
Right,
till
right.
there's.
Yeah.
But once they go to a
That-
Till it's
call,
unavoidable.
I think
once they go
part
to
of
a
this,
call,
Chris,
then there's.
I want, as
there's
a
bunch
village,
of them.
I want us to be as proactive as can for the situation.
And that's what I am trying to do.
Yeah.
I am give them every tool that I could give them. We've got goggles, we've got masks, they've had their fit testing. I mean, they've done everything. They have not, I want you to know, they have not complained about the schedule. They have not.
Did the officer put on all of his gear before he walked in that house
Yes.
today?
Yes.
So they are very protected.
They are protected.
To a
Yes.
point.
To a
Yeah.
point.
Well,
But
yes.
But you
Yeah.
don't, when you,
But you can walk down the street and get.
right, but he
So-
got up all the way to the apartment and had to go back, so he had 1 or 2 steps inside of that building, inside of the apartment. So, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I don't know how far, how close. I mean, they're saying that all of us sitting in this room, if somebody's coughing and sneezing, it's floating around in here, that we potentially could get it. She's the only safe one, because she's got an N95 mask.
And then,
I have a high
well,
risk
you're
son
saying
at home.
that's not, that he had his stuff on and he wasn't safe. You just said that. But what I'm
He-
trying to say
He
is,
was dispatched for a welfare check, okay? So, he had no idea this was a medical. All medicals, they're responding with mask and goggles.
okay, so now you've got your ambulance drivers who take this person away and now they're gonna get it. Do you understand why we
They-
need every single person here for all their
Yeah.
amount of hours when you
The-
are emergency?
The officer was the one that responded first. EMS came second, Gold Cross came third. He alerted, because now he went into a danger zone, okay? Because he wasn't told by the person, because the person who called from a different city halfway across the state. So he had no idea, Jason had no idea what he was going into.
Yeah,
And
if you
then-
listen to dispatch, they'll call cases in and they
Yes,
say,
so
yeah,
then Jason advised the dispatcher to advise the rest of the people that were coming to use PPE. So he was the first one there, and he had no idea what he was walking into because it got dispatched as a welfare check, not a medical, and indeed it was a medical.
Chris, is there
And
any way to do the
most-
schedule, like, okay, so hours aside, if we're still to do the 80 hours, is there any way to do the schedule? And are they able to work and then still do 80 hours, but to do chunks of time versus, I'm trying to think, when I worked at the hospital, I worked like 8 on, 6 off, 8 on,
Well,
6
and
off, you know?
that's what Appleton and Grand Shooter are doing. In a 28-day period,
Mhm.
and they call that the FLSA 28 period, but I'm not sure, I didn't do the math to find out, it's in so many days, but then they work over 80 hours within the first 14 days. And then after that, it's something with 10 hours.
That would give them large chunks of time. They would
But that's
still
what
put in
they-
their hours, but would give them
Yeah.
large chunks of time off that would be
So how hard is that to schedule?
Well, I mean, you're
Well-
talking Grand Chute and Appleton, they're huge departments and they have a ton of people to pick.
Yeah.
And the
that's-
actual officers get to pick their days that they want to work and the days that they don't.
City of Appleton is doing it for social distancing.
Yeah.
And that's why they were kind of like our street department, they couldn't separate everybody.
Yeah, they're just like a public
Yeah,
works,
because
they
there's so
don't
many.
have the
I
facilities to
talked
separate
one of
everyone.
their,
I
And
just
that's why
wonder,
it's
employees-
easier with a smaller department, because you don't have as many on it, like Appleton does.
Chris?
just wondering if we could do like where they're given that a larger chunk off, that would be easier to cover those shifts, but then also giving that larger chunk off too, that would physically pull them out of the pool, so to speak.
Right, Greg Peterson typed me back, he says 28-day FLS work period. So
Excuse
given
me,
a
Chris, where's Greg from?
Grand Chute.
Grand Chute.
Okay.
So given any 14-day, they might include more than 80 hours. The officer picked their own work schedule for 28-day period and are required to select 16 10-hour workdays and 12-hour days off. But when you have 75 officers, you can allow them to pick their work days. They
Yeah.
probably do it by seniority.
Well, if you didn't allow, but do we have the officers available to do that? Obviously, where they're not picking their times, but do we have the numbers available? Shauna's just making a little graph thing on her, I can watch her, she's doing
Do you have a
something.
scheduling program, or do you just do this,
I do,
you do it?
I do.
Okay, and you can put in parameters and have it try to spit out different schedules? No? Okay.
I use Sling, so I can put in, when I actually do the schedule, I can put in, you know, for instance, Sweeney's schedule, and then I can repeat it every 3 weeks, or every 2 weeks, or whatever. And it spits it out right to the end of the year, and that way then they know what they're working.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I wouldn't have any issue with because the contract stipulates the schedule, right, how days on, days off. I don't have any issue with you having the latitude and flexibility to adjust the scheduling. I do very much take issue with the reducing of the hours, but maintaining the pay, working 60, getting paid for 80. I don't have any reservations to additional vacation time accrual or comp time or something of that nature to reward the officers for the additional risk that they're undertaking and the additional stress they're having to be put under. I applaud them for that. I don't want you, as Julie said, to take it that we're yelling at you. You are just the representative that is here. And unfortunately that, you know, you're one side and we're all the other side of the table in this discussion. So I don't want you to take it as we're just attacking you.
Because really, we're not. We're just trying to figure this all out.
Yes, Peter?
All right, let me add comment to what Jim just said. I remember back a number of years ago where we rewarded village employees for outstanding performance. If we gave them a $1,000 bonus, if we gave the police department employees additional vacation days or some type of bonus, in it, you know, up above and beyond what they might perceive as hazard pay. I don't like that word, hazard pay, because there's nothing in their contract, unless I'm wrong, Chris, that entitles them to hazard pay.
No.
Okay, so that becomes another issue for negotiations, but I'm strictly against going against the grain with the contract. If their contract says they work 80 hours for an emergency, doesn't say national, doesn't say local, just says emergency, which is, I think, another point for negotiations, then they should stick to it. Let's try to reward them for their above and beyond performance in a different way. End of conversation.
And we have done that in the past with several employees that had to
Yeah.
cover extra or went above and beyond, like you said. And it's possible that we can do something like this if the board agrees with it. But like I said, 80 hours is 80 hours. We need that coverage for safety reasons.
You know, the other thing I want to add to this is you don't want to set a precedent. These are unusual times. I don't want to, excuse me, I don't want to go
Peter, this is Julie, would you be opposed to, so in the union contract, Article 8.1 has the schedules where we talked on 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off, it very specifically says that. Would you be opposed to an amendment that it would allow the chief and the sergeant, who also sometimes helps with scheduling, to, as long as they get that 80 hours, but could she look at other options for scheduling to make sure that we're maybe giving a little bit more of an off time, but maybe they work a larger chunk altogether?
Look, she's in charge of that whole group. She should be able to rally her troops around, create whatever schedule she can.
She can't though.
She follows the guidelines of the contract.
Yeah, the guidelines say 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. It's very specific. It is very cookie cutter of exactly how she has to do the schedule.
Okay, well, if she wants to make amendments to that, I would agree.
I mean, I
You
think
know,
we need to give that
that's her way of
flexibility.
scheduling. And if somebody gets sick, a full-time gets sick, she's got a part-time she could draw on.
So is that something that, would that give you some flexibility, Chris?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
I mean, I haven't looked at the option. I'd have to physically go in and spend more time looking at the schedule and seeing what I can come up with.
Because, I mean, if
This-
that's something, an amendment to that would
Right.
give you that flexibility, because right now it just seems so stiff, right there, that you have to stick to that.
That's what I suggested too.
Yeah, I bet we would still have to amend.
Yeah,
We would
I
still have to
agree.
do an
That's why I
amendment.
said I'm
Yep,
very open to adjusting that, but
yep,
being,
just giving her, you know, say, go ahead and do it. We have to, we'll do follow the procedure, and however that gets emailed to administrator, then to you, then to Sergeant Barr, however that gets done.
The problem is that when you're going with a whole month like that and you have these days off and everything else, one pay period, they may get paid for, they may work, I don't know, 65 hours, and the next one, they might work whatever the remaining are. I mean, as long as you keep them in where they're consecutively working 80 hours, I don't know how it could work unless there's something in the contract that says, in an amendment, I should say, stating that they will get paid for 80 hours no matter what, even if they work 65 one week and 95 the next week. I mean, these guys, some of these guys are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
I just,
Chris,
there's so much there.
Chris,
Mhm.
this is Peter. You're a very intelligent person. You run a good ship. You can work it out.
And I don't know if they're gonna wanna work it out, so, they're happy with what they're working now. I'm just, like I keep saying,
What?
I'm the one that's trying to be proactive. They would continue working their 80 hours and they're not gonna complain. They are not gonna complain. Are they gonna think it's unfair? They're not gonna come out and say that.
The only reason they would say it was unfair is because everybody else around, well, not everybody else, but in some departments around the local areas, municipalities, are getting paid 60 for 80 hours, are getting paid 80 for 60 hours, I'm sorry. So now you want them to work, we should say they abide by the contract, work for 80 hours, and they want to get paid for 60, just like the rest of the other department within Hortonville gets paid. Is that correct?
The other department gets paid for 80 and they only work 40.
Oh, 40.
40.
And they're not union. There again.
The goal was to try and separate employees. The other thought I had, Chris, was, is it possible to stagger, so I get it, it's 6 to 6, it's 1800, 0600 to 1800. Could there be a half an hour, like a staggered, so that they don't have that, where they would ever cross paths?
No,
No,
because it's just one person. So one person is relieving the other person.
maybe a
And
half an hour.
a lot of times they have to pass down information.
Okay, that was a thought, staggered.
And they did it at work for Justin.
Outagamie actually has them where they're doing that, but they give the guys a half an hour to clean their squads, so they're actually working 13-hour days but they're really working 12 hours on the road because they get a half an hour in the morning to clean their squad, they get a half an hour at the end of their shift to clean their squad.
Yeah, New London's looking at letting their officers take the squad
Yes.
home, so that way they don't have to deal with anybody else using that
Unfortunately,
squad.
we can't do that, cause we got guys that are from Green Bay, we got guys from Appleton. So you're gonna have a New London squad parked in Hortonville down the road from you?
Yeah, right across the street, actually.
There's your
Yeah.
safety factor.
There you go.
That doesn't work if it's out of town.
So the
It's
goal is to
visible.
try and minimize the potential for officers to be interacting with each other.
It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's that, it's being proactive with one, if he goes down, you know, right now, if one goes down today, okay? We can guarantee that we're paying him for 15 days of workman's comp.
And
With the
then-
exception of possibly his on and off days that are here and there,
And we exempted them from the Family First.
right? But they still get paid workman's comp.
Correct, and then, I guess I'm just trying to think of different things. How many squads do we have?
4. So I've separated them and I've put them that only you get to drive this one, and we did the whole, you're not getting in this one after I just climbed out of that one, that same one. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done everything.
Our part-timers, they're covering in other municipalities, correct?
No,
So what are our part-timers, do
our
they,
part-timers are solely ours.
okay,
We have one that applied for Clintonville. However, with this whole thing, they're not gonna stick 2 guys in 1 squad car.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that until this is over with, he's not gonna, and he hasn't even been officially offered, but he's gone through the background, he's done the psychological and everything else, so his last step is the offer.
one of your proposals in that amendment was that they work all 12-hour shifts. And I noticed that in the contract, original contract, there's 12-hour and 8-hour shifts, mixtures.
Right, they work us, the Sunday is an 8-hour shift.
Yeah, there is the 1 8-hour shift.
So-
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just wondering if we just try and find a way to modify schedule. I don't,
I'm confused because I don't see how this schedule change minimizes contact at all. Like, maybe I'm naive, but I don't see how it's reducing. We still have one replacing one. All you're doing, what I could understand, is that you're having a guy who's potentially contaminated removed from the mix,
from the
right?
mix for a
But
longer period of time.
Right, but that doesn't really change the level of contact. You're still having one replace one, so regardless of what happens, you still have the same amount of interactions let me put it that way. There's still the same number of interactions happening. Yes.
Yeah,
Whether you
no.
work 60
So-
or whether you
Right,
work
or
80.
So if I work every week, okay? I work week 1, work week 2, 3, 4, okay? Week 1, I'm having contact. Week 2, I'm not having any contact with anybody.
Right, but you're just spreading that contact amongst all the people, right? Because you still have one replacing one every day, right?
Right?
So it's not actually minimizing the occurrence of the contact, it's minimizing an individual's number of times they make contact in a time frame.
Correct.
And hopefully, when they go home, they're not contacting, they're taking care to isolate themselves from everybody else around their neighborhood.
I get
Yeah.
that, but my point is you still have the same number of contacts
Yes.
happening, and it's the contact itself that's the problem, not,
When the
Right.
call goes out, like I said, she does everything they can do as a department to separate.
which is my point.
Right, but-
Because
but
you have the
once-
same number at 80 hours as you do at 60
Yeah, but
hours.
when the call goes in, that changes the circumstance, yes.
It's minimizing, not necessarily the occurrences, but minimizing that
Individual's
individual.
person. Yes, I
Yes.
get that.
Yeah.
But then all you're doing is throwing another individual into the mix to potentially become contaminated, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really solving the problem, it's just
And we would hope that, like, we've got Department of Public
spreading the
Works,
risk amongst more people.
we've got administrative, we've got people that are being off for a week and then coming back to work, and I would hope that when they're off, the reason why we gave them off was to, and you can't tell people what to do on their off time, but I'm certainly hoping people aren't, and I don't expect anybody to be doing that, but increasing their contact with other people.
My point is I think that the goal of this is two-part, right? We have the hope that we're reducing the need to find coverage if someone does come back contaminated. and the other goal was to maximize safety as a whole, right? Well, I don't think we're meeting the second goal because you still have the same number of interactions. It's just spreading it out amongst more people. So I don't think we're meeting that, which is why I sort of feel like we have to find a better scheduling process or plan to account for that, because that meets the 80 hours. Because reducing the hours isn't reducing the number of contacts.
Well, and I guess the way that I look at it is, so if you're working a 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off, and you now you've switched, how many times? You've switched once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, okay, in a 2-week period, because of all your on and off days.
You meaning one single individual.
One individual, okay? Now, if you do the 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, you've only done it 3 times.
Yes, but
Maybe
someone else
six.
is picking up that slack,
6
right?
times.
Yeah, but could you mirror schedules? So that way the same,
Always
We
the
do.
same,
with each other.
yeah,
We
so you're
do.
always with the same
We do.
people.
Over the
Brian-
So
same
you're
sheet.
Brian
limiting your
Hauser-
exposure to the entire
Yeah.
department and only to the
Right.
people that you're
Brian
back and forth
Hauser,
here.
and that's the way the schedule is, Brian Hauser and Hayden, we got the H team and we got the S team. And so the S team always works, and then you got the H team that always works. So they're always, it's not like you're just kind of moving them
Yeah.
around randomly, no. We've done that already.
Okay.
So you are actually protecting them because you're not mixing an H with an S. So I mean, okay, you know,
Unless somebody
you know what I
takes-
mean, not to be funny,
Right.
but you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so where do we go from
Where are
here?
we at?
Um,
Do we need to make a motion on something? Do we need to,
Well, I think we've determined that the amendment or side, whatever it is, whatever it's called, isn't valid because it didn't go through the board. Okay, so we've already determined that. But David, was there anything that, in talking with the police union, that we would need to, obviously, there's gotta be some kind of communication that we have to give to them. Or was that shared with the officers? Was it, I guess, how far did we get into this? How far do we need to back out?
Well, we had talked about it, we discussed it. Brian had let them know that, David had signed off on it.
Okay,
So, I mean, they're aware that it's out there.
so we need to back out, is what, there's a process of going in, there's a process of going out.
so
Okay.
basically, yes, we should make a motion to say that this MOU is not legitimate. And if we need to do an amendment to present to our representative, then we can make a motion then probably to move into that. How
With
do
the
we wanna
scheduling.
handle
Yeah,
an
so-
amendment?
So we could do 2 amendments. One is to nullify the sidebar thing. And the other one would be to,
Establish an amendment.
to allow, an amendment to the
Where's the article?
specifications of the scheduling, to allow the chief flexibility to,
I would have to do another MOU to do that,
yeah, well,
with the union. I can't just do it on my own.
No.
Right.
well,
And
we
it's
can, we as the board
Right.
can pass a
Brian
The
and I
desire.
would, Brian and I would have to make up a schedule. We would have to do the same process that we just did, okay?
Yeah.
And then we would have to bring it to the board, have it approved by the board, okay?
okay,
And then we would have to have the union draw us up the MOU, because he's the one that, Tom is, the union rep is the one that drafted that. Well, let's back up. Then I would have to bring it to him somewhere along the line and explain to him what we want to do. So we're looking at probably a good 2-3 weeks, maybe 6 weeks by the time we get a meeting.
so
No,
we,
I think what we wanna
can't-
do
I'm-
is
I'm
just
saying,
say to you,
yeah,
we are going to give you
flexibility
the
to,
flexibility. We don't
to do
wanna
the
see the
schedule.
schedule, we don't care what you do with the schedule, as long as you got 80 hours in it for
Yeah.
each officer. That's all we're
temporary-
saying, that is
with
the
a-
only thing
With an
we're
expiration date
changing.
that can be
With
extended.
a sunset date. of
With the
like-
sunset date, yeah. So we want, what I'm thinking we could do is do a motion that would temporarily allow you the flexibility to handle your own scheduling, to deal with the current need that we have.
And keep the 80 hours.
But
And-
then
and-
grant you permission to sign on behalf of, like, obviously as the village president, you have to come in and sign, I'm assuming.
Right?
Yourself, Chris, and then David as.
No, Chris would not.
No?
Chris isn't
Oh,
part
because you didn't
of,
sign the original, okay,
Chris
I'm
is
sorry.
not part of this because she's the
Okay.
boss.
All right, my
So it would be the
misspoke.
village president.
I got it, Jeannie, I know.
Administrator.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. I'm just going back to who signed this one, so,
Or-
which, okay, whatever, we're done with that. So right now, if we just give section, Article 8.1, that we give you that flexibility, as long as it's within that 80 hours, give you the flexibility. If you feel you need to present it to the board, if you feel like we need to review something, if you feel we need to, then make sure, whatever channels you need to work through, we gotta pull another meeting, is this a public safety thing, is this a full board, I don't know.
Why
Or-
would we? We don't look at her schedule now.
But if
Yes,
she needed
well-
some kind of, if she's like, okay, I can't do this, it's gonna have to be this, and I guess I'd like to still give you that option, that if you
Or is it
feel,
not her, is it Jeannie that we would give the,
Either way,
we're the board,
let's look at some dates here. Okay, so 3/25 is when we came with the initial proposal for the R-8-20 COVID-19. That works with the Public Works and the admin team. 3/31/2020 is R-1020, which declared essential employees. So I then started having conversations with Chris on April 2nd and 3rd with the discussions in regards to reworking the schedule. And the note that I had is two pieces I asked for. I wanted buy-in from the employees with their approval, and I didn't want any budgetary constraints or concerns, which she produced. It is now 4/8, so in order to get an MOU done in 4 days to get to this meeting, we're there from April 2nd and 3rd when we started this discussion last week, Thursday, Friday.
you were referring to the board.
Yes,
How about backdating it to April 1?
and that's an option too.
Yeah, it is,
I mean, we could backdate the current MOU and just have it redone.
correct.
You know, we could.
Backdate it to April 1. Doesn't matter when it's approved.
It's when it takes effect, that's right.
Yeah, the biggest piece here, guys, is that Chris has got to devise an 80-hour work week schedule that we can present.
Yeah, but she can do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's what they're saying, they're
And they may
basically,
not wanna do that. It's up to the officers.
that's the comment I was gonna bring before. Now, if you go back to that 3/25 meeting on 2020, the initial piece that we put to the officers is to give them 40 hours of vacation on the backside. And they rejected it. They rejected that. And Chris said if they don't want it, they don't get anything. And that's why we moved forward with nothing for the police department. That was the initial, because we had originally built in a 40-hour buffer for the employees. They did not take it. They did not want it. And that's where the whole conversation of grievance came in. There was then conversation about, hey, I'm concerned. Because if they start calling in sick, it falls on her. And it falls on part-time employees that have to cover.
Did
And
someone say the word grievance, or did any of the officers
No.
say, because I spoke to a couple
No.
officers today, and they're like, never did we ever.
No, the officers, they felt that the 40 hours was like, really? Because they saw what was happening with the DPW. I mean, it was like a morale thing. It was like, we are always, they feel that we are always the odd duck out. That we are, you know, it's the DPW and everybody else. That union contract is almost a duplicate of our personnel manual, to be honest with you. There is not much difference in there. There's even the employees get paid an extra day of holiday than what the, currently, because of how it was revamped, than what the union contract employees get.
Chris,
The only-
this is Peter.
Yep.
I sat in on the last two negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
On those contracts, they had every opportunity to bring that up.
Yep.
Their changes. They agreed to what we mutually agreed upon.
Yep.
And also,
Three.
And-
Three.
Yeah, and they're not.
You know, if this whole thing turns into a big issue, then they should bring it up at the next negotiation level.
Right, and they're not, you know, and it was
Well, you
just,
made it sound to me
well,
like it
because,
was.
because I had one officer that made the comment when I said, 40 hours, I said, you know, they were talking about giving you 40 hours, and the comment was, 40 hours? They're getting paid for 40 hours every week, and we get 40 hours just once? And, I mean, and that was all that was said. Nothing more was said. Somebody else had made, another one had made the comment, and two of them were thrilled, they were gracious. So, I mean, it's kind of it's like a split, and it's like, and nothing more was said after that. Nothing more was said after that. However, as a department head, I'm feeling like it's kind of the short end of the stick a little bit here.
but when,
and I don't
now
know.
back up, so now the feds are saying they're gonna give them some money,
They're
along with the
talking.
nurses
They're
and,
discussing.
and whoever. How do you think the public works is gonna feel then? See, it's a dog-eat-dog world. I mean, we gave these other people, because we're thinking, okay, this is gonna end the end of April. This was all our hopes. Actually, we
By
thought it
Easter.
was gonna end on Easter Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's not. But now they're saying, let's give these other, these officers and these EMSs and firemen, and let's give them all some money. I don't think public works and office crews are included in that.
Well,
So then-
they're not essential.
Exactly.
It's
So there you
essential
go.
designation.
So you can say it's fair here or it's fair here. You can look at it both ways.
But what I'm saying is it's fair coming from your employer. You know, and they, like I said, I keep telling you guys over and over and over, they don't care. They're willing to work their 80 hours. They're not gonna call in sick. They're not gonna complain. Will they be heartbroken maybe? I don't know. I can't speak for them. I can't say that they will, or that this is gonna bother them, or this isn't gonna bother them. But however, when we think about compensating them at a later date, it's gonna cost the village money. It's gonna be troublesome because, one, they're gonna have to use it at a certain time period. So if you're doing like comp hours, or whatever, they have to use them by a certain time, otherwise they have to be paid out. And if they start taking the vacation after it's all over with, then I'm paying them for being here and paying a part-timer to cover their shift.
Doesn't matter, Chris.
And that's fine, if that, and if it doesn't matter,
It's gonna cost you either way. It's your
Right.
budget. You're gonna have to figure it out.
but I won't have the money for the budget to be able to do
You will have
that.
to figure it out between you and
Right.
Dave and the village president. You're gonna have to figure it out.
So where are we at?
Disconnect me.
No,
No,
No.
we're still here.
Oh,
So I guess what we need to do is we definitely need to give the authority to the parties that be to do an amendment that addresses Article 8.1.
You know, I don't mean to be really, this whole thing is really, everybody's reacting so differently. The whole point of my problem, or my issue is that we're in trying times, we're gonna have to figure it out. Chris, you have a job to do, you're doing a perfect job right now. Between you and the village administration, you're gonna have to figure it out. It's gonna affect your budget, and you're gonna have to just deal with it. So whether we pay them out in salaries or whether we pay them out in bonuses or whatever we do, it's gonna affect your budget. That's it. So we're just gonna have to work together. And I apologize for getting worked up about it, but this whole thing is just becoming unreasonable.
So the question, Peter, this is Julie, the question is, what do we come out with tonight? We need to be able to give the authority to amend a section of this contract. We don't
Do
really
we
need,
need to what?
we need some, I don't even know if it's on the agenda, I'm not even sure we're making anything legal here. It's not on the damn agenda. So no one can say, I make a motion to amend, or give the right to amend 8.1. We don't have it on the agenda to do, so I don't really know what we're supposed to do.
Only thing we can do is
well,
retract this.
You can retract the, yeah.
This is the only thing we can do is retract.
We can retract one thing, but we can't do the other, so now we have to put ourselves in danger again and come meet a fourth time.
I don't want to penetrate the guidelines of that contract, I really don't. It should be standalone. Anything we do in this relation, in this event, should be outside of that. So it might be an MOU that might be attached to the contract.
Which is fine,
You
but
want to go in and change any of the language because you're involved in legal, you're involved in a lot of other things that are going to cost us money.
Peter, my point is, we don't have anything on the agenda that gives us that right to do that tonight while we're here.
And we can have it by the 16th for the next meeting, which is a week from tomorrow.
Okay, so whatever we're doing tonight is discussion. We have nothing on the agenda to make, we don't have any place to do action.
Remove this.
All we can
We
do
can
is,
remove one thing,
Yes,
but we
we
don't have the
can
right to do the
remove
other.
this, because we aren't,
that's a
if we're
motion you
not
can
in
make, just to
agreement to
disallow the
accept this.
contracted, and is there a date on it?
Signed 4/7, so.
And we're removing it because of the process wasn't followed. Am I hearing correctly? Especially,
basically, it's null and void. It should not be
And
a
that's-
legal
Well,
document
That's
because
just
it
a matter of
wasn't.
me contacting Tom and telling him that, I mean, Tom's aware of what's going on tonight, so I'll just tell him it's a no-go. And
But we
he'll-
still need a motion by the board,
Yep.
because anything that we do has to be in agreement.
Mhm.
So, because we were not notified, this is actually something that we need a motion to make this MOU null and void.
As learning experience, now our administrator and our chief of police know that. So from this point forward, even Sergeant Farr, I'm sure to let him know that anything has to go through the board. Live and learn.
So do we want to make a motion, or is there more discussion?
Julie, I did that. That's why you were emailed.
No, you emailed us after it's signed.
saying that somebody from the board has to be involved in the signing.
In the process
But that
prior
was, I
to,
want to make that very clear. That was the first question I posed to her, that this is signed with the approval of the board. That was immediately,
You
this
asked
was,
me if I spoke with anybody with the village board, I said
and then
I
it was
have
sent
not.
out immediately to the village board.
I never got a phone call. Before anything gets signed, we have to authorize that signature. And
You
now
have
we
to
know that
authorize it.
process,
Yeah,
we have
I'm
to
aware of
authorize
that,
it
but I'm
before.
telling you, I
Yes,
was
you are correct.
very wide open about that.
So, no need to jump
be-
me.
We need to vote on this, and it has to be a unanimous vote before we could go ahead and have anyone sign this.
Correct, and that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. From this
Yes.
point forward, everybody's in this room. Don't sign a thing, something that, like this, unless it goes to the board first. And I think it's
The
a live
board
and learn
makes the
situation.
decisions. So, do we want to make a motion? Does anyone?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to nullify or reject the MOU as currently stated. That's it.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, Dan?
Aye.
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 Motion carried.
Peter,
No, it's not,
Oh.
because I couldn't hear anything.
Forgot about him.
just a motion to nullify, a motion to nullify the MOU as presented tonight. And it was,
What was that MOU?
that was to restructure to a 60-hour work week with the 80 hours of compensation.
Aye.
Motion is now carried. Do we need to have a motion to go into closed session on anything?
I was
Yeah.
going to ask, is there any, because I was confused by that.
Okay.
It was-
Well, we didn't know if we were going to discuss bonuses, salaries, anything,
Yeah.
and
I
then
see.
it has to be in
Okay.
closed
Yes, that was
session.
I emailed
just in
David
case
and
the
I was-
conversation.
Contractual
Yes.
also.
Yeah.
Any,
Okay, I was-
anytime there is any, individual money discussed or bonuses or anything on that order, we would have to go into closed session.
When you're indicating specific
Specifics.
people, as
Yes,
opposed
Yes.
to a general.
Yeah.
Okay, I
I would,
understood
yeah,
that.
I would just like to reserve the right, though, that we don't let this fall off the face of the earth, that we
Mhm.
need to set a date that we revisit compensation.
Yes.
I want to have something presented on the 16th.
Yeah, I think it needs to be on the agenda.
So we,
It's-
Something.
it's gonna be at, like I said, Chris and I, my next conversation is to see whether or not when we can make a time to meet, and then she's gotta put it to her guys, because they may just tell her.
They might say, no, we're just gonna continue working the schedule.
Yeah.
Is Brian Barr generally part of these, isn't he the union rep for the officers? Is he generally part of these conversations, like in the room conversations?
He and I mean, I look at what's gonna best suit the department, okay? And then I talk with him, we kind of talk it out, and then he kind of gets the approval from the rest of the officers that this is something that we might look at doing, and this would work for us.
He just
So-
might bring the, sometimes, he just might bring a different, to that initial conversation, maybe, I don't know. I don't know, it's just a thought. I think you're doing great. I
As
think,
far as the scheduling you're talking.
as far as the
Yeah.
scheduling, because Brian has done the scheduling quite a bit, and he did it prior to you coming. I just wonder if, if that's something where even when you're talking compensation, Brian might have some of, I don't know, he might have some good input on that too.
I don't know where I would start with
Yeah.
compensation.
I don't know.
How do you? I don't know.
I don't know, I think Brian should be,
Yep.
as a union rep, part of that.
And it's unfortunate because, and I want to clarify to you all that the officers are grateful. They're gonna come to work, they're gonna work their 80 hours, and God forbid any of them get sick. I hope we all stay healthy.
They're happy here.
Chris,
Yeah,
this is Peter.
Jeez.
You can handle it. You do a good job. You can keep them in check. And we can reward them in some other ways.
I know I can. Some days I feel like mom though.
Oh, you know what? I respect you a lot.
Thank you.
Keep good job. Keep good work.
We all do.
We appreciate each and every one of
Yeah.
you.
Very difficult
It
time.
was a lot of work.
It
Are
was,
we being,
and that's why I just don't know if I wanna go through it again.
Hey, you guys, are we being recorded?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, turn it off, please.
we gotta adjourn, Peter.
All right. Is it turned off?
No,
Do I have a
No.
motion to
we need a motion
adjourn?
to adjourn.
Oh, okay, I'll make the motion. I'll make
Second.
the motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.